Good morning, everyone. My name is Jessica Perilla, and I'm the Senior Marketing Executive at Paper Round. Welcome to our webinar all about collecting compostables in London, Brighton and Sussex. Today, we'll be joined by Commercial Director from Paper Round, Tom Mockridge, who will talk you through the findings from our trials and how the new service will work in practice. Sarah Gray and Annalise Matthews from Vegware will go into more details about compostables, their environmental benefits and the expert client support they can provide. And finally, Andy Sibley from enVar, who will talk about the composting process itself. Before we start, I just wanted to run through some housekeeping. You'll see in the right-hand corner there is an option to ask questions in our chat bar. We will look to answer as many as we can at the end of the session, which will last around 30 minutes. Any questions we're unable to get to, we will send around with a recording after the session. You can also pause and rewind at any point during the webinar. I will now pass you over to Tom Mockridge, Paper Round's Commercial Director, who will begin the webinar.
Hi, thank you, Jess. So as Jess said, I'm Tom Mockridge. I'm the Commercial Director at Paper Round, and I will be talking you through the service from the Paper Round perspective. This is the first product launch in keeping with the current strange times that we've launched from a spare bedroom. So I'll talk about Paper Round's approach to compostables in general. I'll then talk about the trials that we have been running for the past 12 months or so. And then I'll talk about the service that we're launching today. I'll then hand over to Annalise and Sarah from Vegware, who will talk about their products and some benefits of compostables. And then finally, Andy will talk about the composting process itself, and then we'll come back to me for some Q&As, which I will distribute around the group as appropriate. So first, some of you will know Paper Round, but for those that you don't, here's a little potted synopsis of the company. We were founded in 1988 as a Friends of the Earth project to prove the business case for source separated recycling in offices in London. We remain passionate advocates of the benefits of source separation. Today, we're a privately held company. We've been privately held for many years now. We're a total waste management company. We collect over 20 different waste streams for source separated waste streams, as well as mixed recycling and general waste, which we take for incineration. Today, we have a large state-of-the-art materials recovery facility in Purfleet in Essex, and we also have a second site in Lancing in Sussex, just outside Brighton. Our approach has brought us a total of about 6,000 customers in London, Brighton and Sussex, and we very much have customers who want to do the right thing, are committed to getting the best environmental outcomes from their waste, and very much are targeted on doing the good thing from an environmental perspective. The compostables market, when as a company we started to look at this as a potential project, we came to a number of conclusions quite quickly. The first of which was that the subject of reusables versus compostables versus non-compostable single use is a very complicated and technical subject. There are many life cycle analyses that have been published, and we will not profess that we will ever become complete experts in the ins and outs of all those debates. But we're a waste company, and our role as a waste company is to provide the best end-of-life solution for all the waste streams that our customers produce and that we see in the market. And it was clear that a number of our customers, a growing number of our customers, were looking at compostables as a solution that they wanted to use in their sites where reusables was not an option. They had to have a single-use product, and therefore we felt we had to look seriously at providing a solution for that waste stream. And the third sort of conclusion we came to is that where single use is a requirement in food packaging, that compostables can deal with what is a very real problem for that, which is food residues in the recyclable waste streams. And food and recyclable waste streams poses three different problems. First of all, food downgrades the quality of the other recyclables, particularly paper and card. It rots The dampness in it causes the fibres in paper and card to degrade. And one of the tests that's done at a paper mill when they get a bale of waste paper for processing is they smell it, and you can smell if it's had rotted food in it, and that will reduce the price or sometimes result in the rejection of that load altogether. So we want to get food out of recycling. Secondly, that food that ends up recycling doesn't end up getting reclaimed. It ends up in the final residue waste stream and will end up getting burnt, which is a lousy end of life for any food. And thirdly, the food packaging itself, which is contaminated with food, that's not really recyclable. We won't pick that out in the recycling streams. That'll end up in food residue, in waste residue, and will get burnt. So for all those reasons, we thought a well set up compostable stream could actually significantly improve the quality of the waste management of the sites which adopted it. But nothing in life is ever simple. And so the other things we had to take account of was the fact that compostables is very intolerant of contamination. Mixed recycling, you can deal, we don't like it, but you can deal with a certain amount of contamination, the wrong stuff. But the technical requirements for compost, something called the PAS 100 standard that compost has to meet, have very low acceptance of a non-target material. So PAS 100, you have to have less than 1/10 of plastic in the end product. So you've really got to get contamination out right at the beginning, right from the front, and work hard on that. Secondly, we're going to run this service across multiple sites. It wasn't good to have 8 sites running a really good service and doing a really good solution, and one of them being lousy and polluting the whole load. The way we collect, the stuff gets aggregated together, so we have to have everyone doing the solution well. And thirdly, it was really important that we set up the sites really well and we educate users, so that we had to have that in place if we we're going to make this work properly. So we decided that rather than going it alone, the best thing to do was partner with someone who really knew what they were doing and was a market leader in this space. So we met with Vegware, and we've had a partnership agreement in place for getting on for 18 months now. And we have been working with Vegware to get the right solution into the market. And one of the things that we decided to do was that we would run trials, a number of decent scale trials over a long period of time, to make sure that we could get this solution to work. And during those trials, we wanted to have good quality monitoring in place to make sure throughout the life cycle of those trials we could check what was going on. And lastly, that we would be able to have a business model that would work and that would get an acceptable price point for our customers, and we would evaluate that as we went through the trials. So for those trials, we chose a number of what we call controlled environments, typically office canteens, where we could determine the products that were being sold or the packaging that was being produced in that environment. So in a canteen, obviously, you can determine what packaging that canteen uses. We wanted to limit the number of sites, so we chose a dozen as the number, and we've run trials over 12 sites, some of them for over a year now. We required all those sites to be invested in running an education program, to have good launch days and good bin signage at those sites. And we have required all those sites to have at least 2 audits, one immediately after setup, one a bit further down the line, and in some cases we've actually gone more than 2 audits of a particular sites in the trial. So how have those trials gone? And this was really kind of the proof of the pudding was getting this right and what the results were. So here is a slide presenting some audit results from one particular large site that we worked with. And audit 1 on the left-hand side was done, we just put some bins in place. It was before the general education program was set up. And we wanted to see what would happen. And at that site, we were getting 35% vegware in the compostable bins. That's the pink wedge, about 14% food, and then other stuff, which is the brown wedge in the bottom right. And then the other wedges are things we didn't really want. So actually, we were getting about 50% target materials. Now, our target is to get down to, near, 10%, a little bit over. So it depends on what the contamination is. So at that particular site, we then did our sort of Blitz education program. We improved signage. We did things to get things up and running. And over about a month period, we ended up with a second audit with that diagram on the right. And you can see second time round, we were getting 66% vegware and 14% food waste. So 80% target material, which is, anyone who has run a dry mix recycling scheme knows that 80% is a good number. It's still quite not where we wanted to be, and we've improved, overall we have improved the numbers beyond that. But this is what you can do in 1 month of good education activity at a site in terms of improvement. So let's talk about the service itself. So why now? Why launch it in the kind of teeth of COVID? Well, we are seeing an uptick, and Vegware is seeing an uptick in customers who are now looking to put single-use products back into canteens because of concerns over infection, infectivity, and so we felt it was important to try and go to those customers who are looking at single use, as well as those who've already got vegware on site at this particular time, to explain the service that we are now confident that we can offer. And this is in line with other services we're launching, kind of post-COVID services. We have a service for PPE we've also just launched. Secondly, we have applied and are in the final stages of getting some public investment through the agency WRAP in some specific sorting equipment, which we'll use for our vegware service, which we will be installing later this year, which means that we will be able to process higher volumes in our quality control procedures to get the quality to the level that we need to take to composting site. And the service itself is actually relatively simple. It's a relatively business as usual service for Paper Round. Clearly, we have set up the sites very well for the reasons that I discussed. We then provide 2 40-litre bins for the bin store. We have a very clear and distinct bright pink colour lid we use for those bins, and bright pink is the colour that we have chosen through all the signage through the service that we provide. Our trucks collect those 240 bins. Box trucks collect those bins and exchange them for a clean bin each time we collect. And the materials in the bins can be collected either in compostable sacks, which we can provide, or it's perfectly okay for that material to be presented as to us loose in the bins. Our trucks then go back to our depots where we put the material through a quality control process to get it, to screen out non-target materials. We then aggregate and bulk up in large containers all the collections over a period of time, and then we transport them to the composting site, enVar's composting site in Cambridge, which Andy will talk about in a second. I've stressed that education is key to this, and site setup is key. In the past, we've done a lot of face-to-face work, and we've sort of handheld a lot of those sites through. Obviously, we're now in a post-COVID world, and we will be having to do a lot of that more remotely. And we've been working with Vegware to come up with mechanisms for doing kind of remote site surveys. And we've all got the technology in place now to do webinars like this for staff education programs. And finally, just a word on coverage. So I've said that we operate in London and Brighton and Sussex. London, our coverage can be described as anything within the north-south circular ring boundary, with a few outlying areas. So Croydon, Bromley, Dartford, and out towards kind of Richmond and Twickenham to the west. And then in Brighton, it's sort of central Brighton, anything about a 25-mile roughly radius from that. Obviously, very significant opportunities. We'd look how they would fit into our scheme, but that is to give you a flavour of the coverage area that we are launching in the service today. Right, that's all from me. I'll now hand over to Sarah from Vegware to talk about the products.
Great, many thanks, Tom. Hi everybody, I hope everyone's keeping well. It's really exciting to be here today for the launch of our composting service with Paper Round. As Tom mentioned, I'm Sarah, one of the National Account Managers here at Vegware, and I've been working with Paper Round over the last 12 months on this service. So a bit of background about Vegware. We started in 2006 by our founder and CEO, Joe Frankel. And we started in the UK, but over the last 14 years, we've experienced fantastic growth, and we now have operations in Hong Kong, Australia, and the United States. And we also have distribution throughout Europe, the Middle East, and the Caribbean, working with over 70 countries. So the aim of Vegware is to solve two challenges posed by traditional packaging. The first challenge is that traditional plastics are derived from fossil fuels. We wanted to make a range that was made from renewable content to provide a sustainable alternative. The second issue, which Tom touched on, is a recycling challenge with traditional packaging. And once it comes into contact with food, it's contaminated and proves to be very difficult to recycle and often ends up being burnt. So at Vegware, we've now developed a range of over 350 products, all suitable for food service, and they're all made from plants and all commercially compostable. So our products are all made from renewable, lower carbon, recycled or reclaimed materials, and we don't use any oxo-degradable or conventional plastics in our products. I'll now chat a bit more about the materials, looking at some of the products you've got on the slide. So the yoghurt pots, you'll see, they're made from PLA, which stands for polylactic acid. Now this is a plant-based material that we use to replace conventional plastics. And in its clear form, it's just suitable for cold. So you'll see it in our salad containers, drinks cups, yoghurt pots. But we can also crystallise the PLA to make CPLA, and that makes it suitable for hot. For example, our cutlery and our hot cup lids. Our food clamshells that you'll see in the images are one of our most popular ranges, and they're made from a material called bagasse. And bagasse is sugarcane fibre, so this is a waste product of sugar production. And it's a really fantastic replacement from polystyrene and suitable for all hot food. We use sustainably sourced card with 100% recycled content where it's permitted with food regulations. For example, our coffee cups. The clear bags that you'll see in the on the slide with our sandwiches and snacks in, they're made from a material called Natureflex. And Natureflex is a wood cellulose film. And it's fantastic because it takes high heat and it can also be heat sealed. We can print and brand a lot of our products, and we use water and vegetable based inks to ensure that it doesn't impact on the environmental credentials. So our entire range is commercially compostable in its finished form. And one of the questions that a lot of our customers ask is, what is the difference between compostable versus biodegradable? So they are in fact the same process, but the big difference is the breakdown speed. And biodegradable says nothing about timescales. So a product that's biodegradable, even under the right conditions, can take hundreds of years to degrade. So that means it's not suitable for composting. Whereas all of our compostable packaging is designed to break down in under 12 weeks in composting conditions. And the key is this is the same as food waste, so that makes it suitable for commercial composting. And in practice, the great thing is it's actually often quicker than 12 weeks. And Andy Sibley shortly will be talking about the composting facility used for this service and their 7-week composting cycle. So at Vegware, we focus on compostability being the only practical solution for recycling food service disposables. And when we've been working with Paper Round and our customers to set up this new stream, it means that front of house, there'll be a new bin, additional bin for used vegware and food waste. So one bin for both products. And this normally goes alongside the general waste and any existing dry mixed recycling streams. And the great thing is it helps solve confusion that we often find consumers have, that they don't know where to put dirty food service packaging. And food contamination is no longer a problem because they are designed to be recycled together. And one of the benefits that we also find is by introducing this stream front of house, it helps to capture food waste that could have previously gone into general waste or contaminated the dry mixed recycling bin. So it's been really exciting working with Paper Round in London and trialling this service with our customers, and our customers and clients have been really supportive and keen to find solutions to close the loop. On this slide, you'll see some of the trial participants that we've been working with. And from my side, I've been working closely with the catering teams, so to ensure that they've got access to all of the vegware products they need to replace their traditional packaging to make it a success. And it's really important for us that there's no compromise on quality or the attractiveness of the food and the operation of their service. And we work really closely with the restaurant teams to make sure they're on board and they understand what the packaging is, and that we can communicate to their consumer at the point of service that the packaging is made from plants and it's compostable. We found the best results have been when all stakeholders work together across the catering, facilities management and the waste sectors. So with the return to business, catering's not going to be looking the same, and we do need to find solutions to maintain social distancing. Over the last few weeks, we've been chatting to our customers, talking through solutions and ideas of what this might look like to get everyone back to work. And some of the solutions include delivering to desks, setting up multiple grab-and-go pods instead of one centralised restaurant to help manage the queues and the number of people in one area. Also ordering through apps and going to one collection point, looking at more packed lunches, more wrapping and ultimately more disposables. Yet chatting to our customers, everyone's commitment to the environment is stronger than ever, and that's really why we feel that now is a really good time to be launching this service with Paper Round. We're really looking forward to welcoming more customers onto the route and working with them on the journey to get there. Thank you for your time, and I'll now hand over to Annalise, who's our waste management consultant in Vegware's environmental team.
Thank you, Sarah. As Sarah mentioned, I work in Vegware's environmental team. The primary role of Vegware's environmental team is to really drive access to composting. We engage with the waste sector, both facilities and collectors, to create new routes to industrial composting facilities. This in turn helps the UK expand its recycling infrastructure and allows the catering industry, our clients, to join the circular economy. From this, we can advise our clients on their options for composting their used vegware. We now have 48 of the UK's largest towns and cities able to access a trade waste collection for vegware products. Our team has been working with the waste sector for around 10 years now, and we draw on this experience to really ensure a smooth and efficient process when a customer decides to join a composting route, like the one offered by Paper Round. Vegware is trusted by the waste sector, and this is something which we find is really important. Not only have we been working with the waste sector for over a decade now, but we also have more independent compostability certification than any other packaging supplier. This is very important for composting facilities as it ensures that their products will break down in industrial composting conditions in under 12 weeks. Our products have been trialled and are accepted at 27 of the UK's bio-waste facilities now, and we work closely with the composting sector and sit on the steering group of RAO Organics. In addition, we work with many waste partners across the UK. We have also established our own waste route in Scotland, which we've now been running since 2017. How do we help with the onboarding process when a client wants to join Paper Round's Vegware waste collection service? A member of Vegware's environmental team will liaise with all stakeholders on the site to understand the real needs at that site level. We'll help the site switch all single-use disposables to vegware compostable packaging. This we find really helps with waste segregation. Then our dedicated creative team designed bespoke bin signage for each client, showing the exact products used on site and matching the exact waste streams used by that particular client. We find this is particularly key in ensuring good waste segregation at site level. Alongside this, we can support a range of communication tools. This includes everything from eye-catching posters, animations to play on TV screens in canteens, till talkers, table talkers, and images for clients to use on their social media channels. These all help communicate that the site is using vegware packaging and composting it. In addition, we can assist your site with staff training. We find that this really encourages behaviour change at the site and enables great waste segregation and great quality waste for Paper Round with minimal contamination. It was our educational sessions and bespoke bin signage which our client ISS felt that really helped change the mindsets of people at site level. We believe it's this behaviour change at site level which is key in making this whole practice work, and we are here to help the sites achieve this. Finally, I just really wanted to sum up by reminding people that composting is actually a form of recycling. It is a great way to reduce the amount of waste being sent to landfill and incineration at site level. It's also a great local form of recycling with no need for export of waste outside of the UK, which you often see with plastics. And now I'll hand over to Andy Sibley, the Managing Director from enVar, who will discuss composting in more detail.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name's Andy Sibley. I'm the Managing Director of enVar Composting. We're a composting company that's part of the Heathcote Holdings Group. We're a family-owned business based in the southeast of England. Our group of companies range from waste management firm called Countrystyle to Very Green, which manages inputs into various AD plants in Kent. So what are we going to cover today? Firstly, we'll talk about how we effectively recycle food waste and compostable packaging by either composting or digestion. Starting with composting, there's two main types of composting. Firstly, open window composting, which is designed to treat green waste only. You're not allowed to put food waste in an open window site. And secondly, there's in-vessel composting, which is where this stream goes to. That's where the food and green waste is treated indoors in controlled conditions. Secondly, I mentioned digestion. Typically, we use anaerobic digestion in this country. It's a process of breaking down food waste to produce gas and then organic fertiliser. This process is excellent as it produces energy, but it's not ideally suited to this waste stream because an AD plant typically will remove all contamination before it actually enters their process. This contamination is normally either sent to landfill or incineration. We're also going to have a brief look at the input materials that we can accept, the IVC composting process and the compost that we produce. So in-vessel composting, enVar has an operation just north of Cambridge. It's a large site and you can see a picture, next slide please, a picture from on the right of the in-vessel units. Next slide please. So how does your waste arrive? Normally, as Tom said, it arrives via a transfer station after a pre-sort. The waste is bulked up to a reduced tonne miles and arrives at our facility. To ensure that we can treat this, as Tom mentioned, we have to adhere to PAS 100. That means that our materials that we accept have to adhere to either OK Compost or a British standard. And I can happily confirm that Vegware does this. After various trials, we're very happy with the material that goes through our system. So after the load arrives, one of our staff scores the load. We do this with every single load. It's not just a compostable packaging target. We score every load to identify if it's got any contamination. After the load's arrived, we shred it. By shredding it, we're opening up the structure and we're increasing the surface area. By increasing the surface area, we're increasing the amount of bacteria. Once they're shred, we mix the materials together. So we mix the compostable packaging with our other waste streams. Then we got a homogeneous mix that we put into one of our tunnels. Our tunnels are a bit like a grain drying floor. You can see on the right, basically they're a big box with airflow and monitored temperature probes and oxygen meters within them. So we load up the tunnel, It goes in the tunnel, and what we do is we blow air through it. By blowing air through it, we're actually giving energy to the bacteria. That bacteria starts bouncing around together and starts heating up naturally. There's no artificial heat used in our process. We heat it up for two processes, one to 60 degrees Celsius, 24 hours, and then a further 72 hours at 45 degrees. Once we've achieved those two parameters, we can be confirmed that we don't have any E. coli, salmonella, or weed pathogens within our process. Next slide, please. After the sanitisation process, we come on to maturation. Maturation is where we take the material outside, as you can see from the picture on the right, where we store it in long windrows, where each week we monitor temperature, oxygen and moisture to ensure that we've got the correct composting conditions. To aid in the process, we can also turn it. So the picture you can see in the middle is a large windrow turner, which can also add moisture, which we normally use as water, to adjust the moisture. Our turner is a large machine and it can turn the whole site to around 20,000 tonnes in a day. Next slide, please. So after the maturation process, which lasts about 6 to 7 weeks, we have a product that's ready for screening. At Cambridge, we screen all our material to 10 millimetres. That removes any contamination and any larger fractions of wood, sticks or anything that we don't want to go in as our final product. So our product is using mainly local agriculture and local soil blending. It's a nutrient-rich, peat-free soil improver. So from a total of 7 to 8 weeks from the packaging that you send into our facility, we'll turn it into a peat-free, nutrient-rich compost. Next slide, please. So just to sum up where we are, compostable packaging, when sent to a composting facility, is composted rather than landfill and burned. One of the worst things, as Tom mentioned, is contamination. So anything we can do by reducing the contamination reduces the amount we have to sort at the back end and the amount we have to either landfill or we have to send for incineration. It's important to note that food waste and compostable packaging is valuable. Food waste is typically made into gas in this country, and packaging is, as we've mentioned now, into a peat-free fertiliser. Many thanks for your time, and I'll just pass you back to Tom for any questions.
Thank you, Andy. So we've had a number of questions that come in, so I will take them in the order that they have come through. Yeah, let's just go from the top here. So the first was a kind of simple admin thing, just to remind, there was a question about, will the content be available via email? Yes, the recording of this webinar will be made available after the event. Then the second question from Chris Pilkington about, it's a very good question about he thought that vegware compostables could be put in the same bin as food waste, and I didn't go into this in a little bit of detail, but I definitely think it is worth covering. So where there is a distinct source of pure food, such as in a kitchen, and you have an existing food waste service, then absolutely the advice is that you keep food, pure sourced food, separate from a composting service. And there are two reasons for that. One, the government advice is that food sent to anaerobic digestion is the best choice. Composting food is the second best choice. It's still good, but the best choice is sending it to AD. The second thing is on a per kilo basis, it's far cheaper to send food to AD than it is to send it as part of a composting service. But the food can very happily go through composting services, the composting process that Andy has described, and therefore for small amounts of food, for food residues that people aren't going to systematically scrape every single single-use carton for the remains of the soup into a food bin, that kind of food residue can very happily and it's kind of efficient to send it through a composting process. So pure food, keep it separate. Food scraps, send through this process is the take-home message that everyone should have here. Does anyone want to add anything to that from the team? No. Okay, I'm getting shaking heads there. Okay, so then the next question is about the PPE service I briefly mentioned. Yes, it does include face masks. There'll be more details about that as available from Paper Round. Next question. how long is the running time of the composting plants? I think Andy covered that off. It's typically a 7-week cycle. The vegware products are actually designed to be composted in 12 weeks. Sarah, I don't know if you want to confirm, or Annalise, you want to confirm that? Then.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, that is correct. Our products traditionally up to sort of 12 weeks in industrial composting facilities, but as Andy mentioned, a lot of facilities in the UK, including his one, do run to a quicker timescale and do work just as well in those timescales.
Okay, thanks, Annalise. Then a question about the residue. In my slide with the 2 audit samples, there was a bunch of non-compostable material or non-food material there. So what happens to that at our site? Some things like cans and PET plastic bottles, we may, where that's obvious, pull it out, and that will get put into the appropriate streams for aluminium or steel or PET plastic. But generally, the material that's in those, the non-target material, will end up being separated out and screened and burnt, as is general waste, because it's so contaminated it has no real use in any other way. Question from Francesca: can all vegware go into the same bin, i.e. coffee cups and cutlery and clamshell, everything? The short answer to that question is yes. I don't know if the vegware team, do you want to kind of comment on your product set and compostability a bit more?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, all of our products can go in the same bin, and that's really the beauty of the solution, is that you don't need to take your lid off your coffee cup. You don't need to take your fork out of your compostable box, is that it will all go into that one bin. And so there's a lot of work that goes behind making sure, all of the products are trialled at the sites like Andy's and work through the process, and that everyone's happy with that. But yeah, they will all go through into the compostable bin.
Okay, then the next question, there's some multiple questions about the cost of the service and the bins that we provide, and running this service at festivals and kind of events. So the typical cost of the service for a 240-litre bin per bin is £15. That's the sort of simple answer to that question. Do we provide multiple smaller bins? So Paper Round as a company does provide a range of bins to customers. We don't have specific vegware bins that we provide. Many of our other standard bin products can be labelled with appropriate kind of composting signage, and will perfectly well do for composting services. We don't actually have specific composting bins. And then running this service at things like events, which is a very, we've had this question has come up, and it's definitely worth dwelling on a little. So the key thing for us is education of users and how controlled the environment is. So if you have an environment, say a market, where you have lots of people bringing in outside packaging and you have no ability to educate those users, the chance of getting acceptable contamination rates are extremely low, and so we would be unlikely to want to service that kind of event. Where you have a very controlled environment, we might take a different attitude to that, and so one of the, take a different view, because obviously we want to recycle where we can. So one of the trialists was a film production company, and media people aren't kind of known for being kind of super diligent on this kind of sorting everything out in a very kind of clean way, but that production company, they were running canteens. They ran the canteens for that site. They control the canteens for that site. Everything used on that site was compostable, so they had very good control of the products that was used. Was vegware compostable product, and they had a monitoring system for the bins that they set up for the film sites they were working on. They had people checking on those bins, so we would talk to them. We were quite happy their processes and procedures were good, and their site setup was good, and we have successfully run the service with that particular non-standard site. So we can do non-standard sites, but we do have those gates that we do want people to pass through for quality control. Anything from the vegware team or Andy on that on that topic? No. Okay, I'm getting shaking heads there. Next question from which is really for the Vegware team. Can you explain the difference between Vegware products compared to other compostables?
Yeah, I can take on that one. So Vegware products are tested to be certified compostable, and this is something we find is particularly key. That there are other products on the market which claim they are compostable and have been trialled at other facilities, and they have struggled to break down those processes. Something we really do is we work really closely with the waste sector, with facilities such as Andy's, to make sure that the products they're taking are trialled at the facility and do break down so that they can achieve their Pass 100 standard. Yeah, I would say that we do spend a lot of time on certification, and we do have a full team working on certification to make sure that our products are all certified and can break down in under 12 weeks in the composting process.
Okay, thank you, Annalise. Next question from Chloe. So is the waste collected and sorted locally, then always transferred to the site at Cambridge? So yes is the answer to that question. We obviously collect it from the rounds in London and Brighton. We have the sorting facility at our depots. We then aggregate the material once it's been quality controlled and sorted, and then take it up to the enVar site in Cambridge. So yes, local sorting before transfer. And then there's a whole, as Andy went through, at the enVar site, in the part of the process, there's a whole lot of further quality, really quite high tech quality control at that site to get it down to that really very minimal levels of contamination that are required by the PAS 100 standard. Next question from Juliet at Plastic Free Lewis. Any plans to adopt this program for small independent shops and cafes? So the service that we're launching today is a bin service. It's a 240 litre bin service, which is a kind of like, put those not that doesn't immediately mean something to. That's kind of a larger domestic bins that you see, domestic collection bins run by councils of 240 litres. We have a minimum requirement. We want to collect 2 of those. We are looking at a curbside sack service that we will run on cage vehicles. Once we have got through sort of phase 1, we think we will be able to run that successfully. But again, all the gates about making sure we have high quality control will be in place as we come to launch that service. Next question, what is the biggest contaminator? What materials are the problems? So I think Andy, you're probably the best place to answer this. Plastic is the real killer. From my perspective, it's difficult to distinguish that, and it is also it's difficult to pull it out. So plastic, I would say, is the #1 problem. Andy, I'm sure you've got views on that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good question. Yeah, you're quite right. Plastic is the most issue for us, and within plastic, hard plastic is the hardest for us to remove from our waste stream. We have wind separators, which are basically big hoovers that can suck out lights. So we can suck out plastic bags and any films that aren't biodegradable or compostable, but we do struggle with hard plastics. We physically have to pick that by hand. The enVar site has 2 picking stations on site that constantly have sort of up to 5 people in that pulling hard plastic off. We can do everything else mechanically, but hard plastic at the moment, until we advance to optical sorting, is very difficult for us.
Thanks, Andy. The next question from Sachin Kumar is for the Vegware team. So are Vegware paper products coated with compostable material?
Yeah, I can take that one. So so the paper products that need to be leak proof, so your coffee cups and soup containers, they're lined with our PLA material, the plant-based alternative that we spoke about to plastic, and this means that they're completely leak proof and can take high temperatures. We also have products like our grease resistant papers and deli wraps that have a compostable wax-based lining on them to deal with grease and heat. And then we have other ranges like our carrier bags, which are 100% recycled content but don't require any lining on them because they don't need to take liquid. But I'll also add, we've got more information about all the materials and products as well, so we can send more of that after if helpful.
Okay, the next question is from Zoe, which is kind of illustrates why it was right to launch this service now in the COVID world we're all now blessed with, or not, I should say. So the question is, we need to switch our crockery, glasses and cutlery to disposables when we return back to work. Can I order these supplies through Vegware and have one bin for the utensils to be disposed of and collected by Paper Round? The answer to that is yes and yes. Certainly we can collect the compostable replacements for crockery, plastic cups and cutlery. Absolutely, that's what we do. I don't know if Vegware, you want to comment about the ordering process at all from your side?
That's a really good question. We don't supply the market direct. We work with lots of distribution partners who stock our products and really happy to work together. So the key thing really would be to find out where you buy your food or non-food from at the moment, so we can find the best route for you. And we're happy to send samples directly to get the ball rolling and find out what items you'll need.
Okay, thank you. The next question is there a detailed brochure of the sort that we can share with customers in food service? So we have a brochure outlining the service that Paper Round provides, and I know the Vegware have lots of brochures on their product. And if you want to say anything about that, Sarah or Annalise.
Yeah, we've got, from a product side, we've just launched our new product guide. So we can help on the product part of it. We've talked about making sure we have a joint flyer, so I think that's the next step, is just having a one joint fact sheet, probably with Paper Round, on this service. And we have a wealth of fact sheets on talking about the benefits of our products, the materials, the communication support, so we can happily supply that to you so you can share with your team and customers.
Then there was a question about bin collections sent to enVar. So I've already given information about the cost, but the one thing I probably should stress is that we do want a minimum of 2 bins for the service to make it worthwhile sending a truck to a site. But this is not a particularly time sensitive material, so it's not as if you need to have a daily service with a bin a day. So these 240 litre bins can sit around and have material added to them over say a couple of week period, and we can do say a two weekly or perhaps even less frequent collection than that. The key thing is we need to have a minimum quantity before it is worth our while financially to come to site. But time of how long it takes a site to collect that material is not a key sort of rate limiting factor in the service. Next question, which is I guess for Vegware. Do moulded CPLA items compost at the same speed as bagasse trays and PLA cups, all within 7 weeks? I thought thicker items like cutlery would take longer.
Yeah, I can cover this, and I'm sure Andy might want to say something after as well. Yep, our CPLA items do compost down within 7 weeks. Sometimes, yes, items which are more fibrous, like the cardboard and the bagasse, might compost more quickly than 7 weeks, and they might have actually finished the composting process a little bit sooner than some of the PLA items. But all of our items which we sell work through enVar's process, which is a 7-week process.
Yeah, I think I can probably answer the next question as well within this answer, if that's okay. So our composting process, although it's 7 weeks, our first week is in an intense composting phase. So we're really enhancing the composting process within that first week. We're blowing a massive amount of air through the process, and we're really getting the bacteria going. So we're probably enhancing that first week by sort of 4 or 5 times a standard composting process would be. The second question is, somebody asked, after the 7 weeks, we screen at 10 mil. We get a product that is above the 10 mil, and we call that oversize. Now, do we ever see the compostable packaging in that? We can't identify it because obviously it's being composted by that stage. However, it does get recomposted a second time round. So within our vessels, we need a certain amount of structure. we need to keep the air open, we need to keep the porosity correct. So we do reintroduce it again. So it gets a second bite at it if it hasn't composted it within those 7 weeks.
Thanks, Andy. That neatly answers the next question on my list, so that's very helpful. And then I think this is more of a kind of statement that we can all, I think, furiously agree with, which is that it'd be great if everyone on the webinar tells everyone they know not to put plastic in their home domestic organic waste collections, whether this is green only or food and green. Plastic is the problem for composters. Andy, I think that's talking about a wider issue of people putting plastic in green waste or food waste bins. I'm sure you have some strong views about that. You could endorse that statement.
I touched on it in our presentation. It is the real bane of our lives at the moment. We're striving to make a cleaner and cleaner compost, well below the PAS 100 regulations. A lot of our compost nowadays is going for blending. So it's imperative that our compost is incredibly clean, and the costs that are involved in removing this plastic are colossal. So anything we can do to remove the plastic within our waste streams, green, food and green, or compostable, is worth pushing at every opportunity we've got.
Thank you. Right, and this looks like the final question that I've got here, and we are rapidly running out of our allotted time anyway. So it's a bit of a long question, but bear with me as I read this out. As a company, we often order in food for our team. Is there a directory of food businesses that use vegware that we can consult to make sure we're only ordering from places that use this packaging? I've tried to find such a list but can't. I guess vegware, can I bounce that question at you?
Yeah, sure, no problem. Good question. Because we work with distribution partners, we don't always know all of the restaurants and takeaways and food businesses that are using our products, but we do have a wealth of communication materials and support tools that we have on our website, and that we also share with our distributors to share with their customers. So we really, these tools include kind of social media kits and posters for the food businesses to communicate that they are using vegware and what vegware is. So really, I think the key is if food businesses are using vegware, please do get in touch with us, and we can make sure we've given you the tools to communicate that you're using our compostable packaging, and to see if we can help with the end of life side of it and any consumer communication and engagement.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. And then, as we are coming to the top of the hour, I think this is the last question on my list that's come through to me, which is just a comment that labelling of packs must be key. And I would very much endorse that question / statement. And one of the reasons why we partnered with Vegware for this service is that in order to get users in a particular environment used to using the composting bins on their site and kind of repeat behavior, as they needed to see the same logos and the same packaging kind of color schemes day in day out, and therefore having products from one company on a site meant that the chance of that happening and user education being kind of becoming an embedded ingrained habit was far better when you've got key labeling on a site. And I think generally, but there's two parts to this question as I think about it. That's very much from a Paper Round perspective in the sites that we've run, but labeling packs as compostable is also a key thing. And I don't know if Sarah or Annalise, you want to take that from a more general perspective about the labeling of compostable stuff that you do.
Yep, I can definitely follow up with that. So a lot of our range, as Tom said, is quite clearly marked, and it's indicated that it is vegware packaging. Something which we actually developed on the back of what's required in the US is a thick green band on a lot of our products to really highlight that they are compostable products and they are to be put in the compostable waste stream. So you'll find this on some of our food containers, our hot cups, etc. A lot of our other products also do have stamped on it quite clearly vegware, so it's nice and clear. Something else we have, which a lot of customers like to use, especially initially, is the vegware labels which we produce. And so this is just an extra indicator that that particular item is compostable. So they might stick it on the sandwich wedge or on the yogurt pot, for example, just to really stimulate that behaviour change in the first few weeks or months. In addition to this, as I mentioned before, our bin signage is really clear and key in ensuring that the waste is put into that waste stream. Our bin signage shows the exact product your client is using at site. So should it be our craft brown hot cup, it will be that exact hot cup on the bin signage image. And this is what we find is a really clear labelling system, which really helps ensure that the waste enters the correct waste stream.
Thanks, Annalise. So I've come to the end of my questions. It's perfectly timed for the end of the hour. I'm sure we all want to go off and do other things, other meetings and lunch and those kind of things. So Jess, can I just hand back to you very briefly, just to remind everyone of the kind of housekeeping, where they can get a copy of the recording. And with that, thank you everybody for your time and attendance today. We've very much appreciated it. And I look forward to hopefully speaking to many of you soon as we roll out the service. Jess, I'll hand back to you at this stage.
Yes, thanks, Tom. So that concludes today's webinar. We hope that you found it interesting. As I said at the start, we'll send around the recording and any answers to questions that we didn't have time for today. And like we said, if you want to find out any more information about the new service, feel free to contact us at sales@paper-round.co.uk. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.